Hey everyone, Connie here with my ranking of the Straw Hat Pirates post Whole Cake. So I was actually supposed to record this earlier and I completely forgot. It completely just skipped my mind. But we're getting into it now later than I wanted, but we're just going to kind of get through this. Basically, it's exactly as it sounds. I'm ranking the Straw Hats from least to most favorite as of the end of Whole Cake Island. There's no real qualifiers or rules or any specifics to that. It's just personal taste based on where I think I would rank them. And this isn't to say like the one at the bottom doesn't isn't necessarily going to be one I hate or dislike. It's just the one I like the least out of all of them. And this is only as of current. This list will change, and I'll probably do this again after we get either caught up on Wano or through Wano, something in that area. Just because we'll get to see more characters at that point, and characters we haven't seen for a while, so things might change and rearrange and all that jazz. And we are only counting officially confirmed Straw Hat crew members as of the end of Whole Cake. So anything after that, if anything comes up or whatnot, this is only as of at the end of Whole Cake Island specifically. Official crew members. So we're just going to get started. So let's bring this up. And we start with our number 10, Franky. Franky post time skip honestly has just been the most disappointing downgrade of all the characters in this series. Post time skip, he's just not likable. He's reduced to a one note gag where in especially in Water 7 and Enie's Lobby, but even in Thriller Bark and all of pre time skip he was that he was in, mind you, he was just this vastly interesting dynamic character who, yeah, was a bit goofy, but wasn't a one note gag. But post time skip, it's a one note robot gag the entire time. One note robot gag with the occasional lines of misunderstanding what the word pervert means, and a couple lines of "oh, being manly," that kind of thing. But there's no actual depth to his character, and he doesn't really have any time to truly shine, in my opinion, post time skip. So that's why he's down at the bottom. Pre time skip is much better for Franky. He would have been higher up. But next, number 9 is Brook. And while Brook did have some good stuff to do during the course of Whole Cake Island, he's still this low mostly just because everyone else on the list is higher, but also because even though he did have some good stuff to do in this arc, he still isn't the most interesting. Um, like he just, I feel like they're on the verge. I feel like Oda's on the verge of making him really good, but just has yet to actually go all the way, has yet to actually really make him shine. And it really sucks because Brook was the last crew member introduced before the time skip happened. And he was just, he had so much room for possibility. And hell, in Thriller Bark, he was great. But since then, it's just like they haven't done enough with him. And I feel like Oda just, I don't know, it almost feels like he doesn't know what to do with him. That's my view on it. Number 8 is Chopper. Chopper actually would have been lower than Brook before Whole Cake Island. But Chopper, with his specifically his interactions with the likes of Carrot and whatnot, and the specific moments he's had in this arc, elevated him just a tiny bit higher. Um, Chopper is another one of those characters who hasn't done too much. Like he was great in his debut arc of Drum Island. He was great in Alabasta, but since then, it just seems like he's not as exciting or interesting anymore. And he had a couple moments here and there, like he was good in Punk Hazard, for example, but that's only because he had something specific and huge to work off of in terms of story. But otherwise, it's just like he's mostly most of the time he's relegated to more of a mascot character for the crew rather than an actual big member. Like, even though he's the doctor, which is an extremely important position for the crew, even that doesn't seem to be as big of a deal as it should be. Like, yeah, you get to see him doing some doctoring every now and again, but it's usually very minor. And it's kind of just thrown in as just like, oh, this is just a thing. It never gives it attention or focus or interest to it. So I just feel like he just hasn't done as much as he could. And there are some occasions as well where it's just kind of disappointing too. Like he was really disappointing in Skypiea, for example. He was just kind of there in Water 7. Enies Lobby, he had a better role, but that was only to introduce Monster Point. And it's just like, they just haven't. I feel he's another one that Oda just hasn't done enough with. It's like Oda tries to focus on the same crew members all the time, and the other ones kind of fall to the wayside because of it. But anyways, moving on. Number 7 is Luffy himself, and this is probably the most controversial choice on this list, or specific ranking on this list. Having Luffy this low. And the reasoning is simply, I think the other characters are more interesting at this point. And don't get me wrong, I love Luffy. Luffy's a fantastic main character. He has great character. He has great depth. He has great interest and comedy, and he's wonderful. But everyone else above him, I just find more interesting and fun to watch. For one reason or another, which I'll get into. Luffy is only this low. Is this low because honestly, he doesn't change much. Like, yeah, he's grown very little bits throughout the series, just sprinkled in a little bit of growth. But for the most part, he's kind of the same character he was at the beginning. His ideals are the same, his thoughts on friendship are the same, his motivations and all of that is pretty much exactly the same. And while it's fun to watch and entertaining, and I don't necessarily get sick of it, it's not as interesting when you have other characters who have grown so much or just really been developed wonderfully. And I don't feel like Luffy's really had that as much as the others. Luffy's kind of just that character who, right from the start, was just so good you don't need to do much for him, but because of that, the others tend to surpass him in terms of interest factor for me. And again, not saying he's bad by any means. No one on this list I would say is a bad character, and no one I would say I dislike or actively, especially actively hate. No, I like all of these characters just to different degrees. But moving on, we go to number 6, Nami. So Nami would have been lower than Luffy for sure, but Whole Cake Island really did wonders for her. She was phenomenal in this arc. Her interactions with Sanji, her strength in battle, her just constant, uh, just excitement in everything she does, the way she handled King Bomb and the other homies in the forest, she was wonderful, honestly. She had just a lot of great moments in this arc that really just elevated her for me. There are others still above her overall, in my opinion, but she really came into her own. If they continue doing this for her, she could easily rise up even more. But number 5 is Usopp, and I almost kind of feel weird putting Usopp above since we haven't seen him for quite a while, but Usopp has honestly been one of my favorite characters, and that might also be a bit of a controversial thought for the Straw Hat crew. A lot of people might not like Usopp as much; they might find him annoying or too goofy or too much of a coward or whatnot. But I don't see where a lot of those thoughts come from, especially the coward part. Like, yeah, he's scared all the time, but he's not a coward. There is a difference. Remember, the definition of courage is doing what's right despite your fears. You can be constantly afraid and still be courageous as hell, and that's Usopp in a nutshell. He always goes out of his way to do what's right, even if he's terrified. And most of the time, he's terrified. um, Not to mention, he's extremely skilled in terms of invention. He's an artist. He has so much going for him. And even beyond that, he's developed over the years. He's gotten a lot braver, just in terms of general bravery and less afraid of the situations. He's still there, but less so than he used to be. He's also a lot more useful in battle, having learned a lot more skills, a lot more different tricks and tactics, and he's just more interesting of a character. Like, it really kicked off in Skypiea. Like, he really became good there, but like then you have Water 7, like holy shit, Water 7 did wonders for him. And then post time skip where he got jacked as shit. And it's like, Usopp's awesome. I do not understand the hate for him. I think it's really weird. And I think it's one of those situations where it's like the popular thing. Like, it's popular to hate on Nickelback, it's popular to hate on Usopp, despite the fact that he's fantastic. And same with Nickelback, they're a great band. But or Aquaman. Aquaman's another good example of that from DC Comics. It's popular to hate on Aquaman, even though he's freaking amazing and one of the best heroes in DC. Anyway, though, let us continue on because I could talk about Usopp for a long time, but we want to get through these. So, number 4 is Jimbei, the first son of the sea and the newest member of the crew. Jimbei wanted to be a part of the crew back in Fishman Island, but he decided he had to take care of his other dealings first, which we found out was his connection to Big Mom. In this arc, he does that. He officially leaves Big Mom and officially joins Luffy's crew. And while at the end he does stay behind in order to help his old crew as well as to help the Straw Hats escape, it's made very clear he is officially a member of the crew at this point. He's just not traveling with them at the moment. But hey, neither is Zoro or Robin or Usopp. They're like not with them at the moment either. So are they not the crew? Are part of the crew? That it's not how that works. Jimbei is still part of the crew, even if he's not traveling with them on the Sunny at the moment. Um, but yeah, Jimbei, since his introduction in Impel Down, was always a really cool character. Like, the fishmen characters were always really interesting. You go from having your introduction to them being these awesome bad guys with the Arlong crew, but then you get them sprinkled throughout here and there, and it's like once you meet Jimbei, it's like holy shit, you are cool. I like you. And just every time he appears, every time you see him fight, every time you hear him speak or see him interact with Luffy and them, it's just like you just love him more and more. And so when he wanted to become a member of the crew but had to finish things first, it's like, okay, this is going to happen, but down the line. And then when it finally happens in Whole Cake, it's like, yes, this is awesome. The moment where he has the sake cup and leaves Big Mom, making it official, God, that was such an epic scene. Jimbei as a character is really cool. He just has this presence to him. He has experience that the other members of the Straw Hat crew, even Robin, doesn't. He has a lot of knowledge from his life as a fishman and his life as a member of the Sun Pirates that also gives him some interesting advantages that other members don't have. Him being a fishman also sets him apart because outside of, Brook being a skeleton and Franky being a cyborg, the other members of the crew are pretty human and have pretty human-like abilities. Like outside of Chopper, but Chopper's ability, fighting styles are still very human in like their concept. It's still like a lot of martial arts and stuff. Um, but outside of like their devil fruits, they're like, yeah, they use human stuff. Like even with their devil fruits, Luffy just punches and kicks shit a lot of the time, just in different ways. Zoro uses very human weapons, a sword. Sanji kicks shit. Like Robin, even though she's making a whole shit ton of arms and legs and shit sprout out everywhere, she's still using hands and legs and shit. She's still using human tactics. And it's like, even Franky, you could say, is just using like guns and weapons and stuff like that. But Jimbei has like this unique set of skills that really sets him apart in the crew. His ability to use fishman karate, which is definitely not quite the same as human stuff, his ability to like throw water the way he does, as part of like fishman strength and all. His ability to swim in the way that in the ways he does, his knowledge of the sea in general. He is an invaluable asset in a way that no one else in the crew can be. But that's the thing, and Luffy's made this apparent already in the series, that each member of the crew has their point, and Jimbei makes this really good like focus for the crew to have a really unique position. I know I just really butchered what I was saying there, but you know what I mean. His position in the crew is really unique because of him being a fishman, and it really makes him stand out amongst the crew. Um, and I just really like him. I just really like his character. I always have. So moving on, though, we get to our top three, my three favorites of the crew, and number three is Sanji. Vinsmoke Sanji, formerly of the Germa 66 Army and the Vinsmoke family, and now and forevermore, a Straw Hat. Sanji would not have been in the top five before Whole Cake Island. Whole Cake Island rose him up to number three. Sanji was always a character I liked, but always had some issues, especially with his treatment towards women being a little too much, and in some ways being a little troubling. Um, but in this arc, you actually find out why he has those, why he treats women that way, and it's actually really sad. It's really fucking sad. Not only that, but he's developed in a lot of ways that really make him a tragic character. Sanji is a tragic prince who kind of idolizes women because they're the only ones who, in his childhood, gave him the hope to continue on and the desire to make something better of himself. And it really makes you feel for him. And in this arc, you also get to see other sides of him you never saw. You get to see the regrets and sorrow. You get to see depression and pain. You get to see just so much he has to go through that we've never seen from him before. It really just helps make him feel like that much more of fledged, a full-fledged character. It gives him so much depth and interest. Hell, the interactions he has with Luffy in the first half of this arc are phenomenal. From the fight to rejoining the crew, it's just so good. And in the second half, when he's interacting with Pudding and all, holy shit, that's really good interaction. That's just really well written. And he doesn't even like, he simps after her a little bit, but let's be honest, he also treats her really well. And that's something that a lot of naysayers towards Sanji seem to always forget. He really treats women well. Yeah, sometimes it's a little troubling in the way he handles it. Um, like for example, the entire thing about not like fighting any women is a little much for obvious reasons. But at the same time, like you understand it more now. And you understand why he won't fight women, why he's so against that idea, why he hates the idea of hurting a woman. And it's really sad. And again, you get to see so much more from him in this arc that just really makes him feel like such a great character. And I really can't wait to see what they do with him in the future. Hopefully Oda hasn't just like left him at the wayside now that he's had his arc. But we move on to number two, Roronoa Zoro, because Zoro's always been one of my favorites. For a long time, he was my number one. And he's only number two because of who has taken my number one slot, let's be honest. But Zoro, even though we haven't seen him since before Whole Cake Island, he still holds this spot for me just because he is still one of the most interesting characters in the show, much less on the crew. He's just so vastly interesting as a character, and you see him change and grow throughout the series. You see the similarities to other characters like Sanji. You see the differences to other characters. You see how he interacts with the crew and his loyalty to Luffy and the crew at times being tested. You see how his entire mindset against fighting women, which he kind of shared with Sanji at first, how that kind of evolved and how he kind of like worked past that in a way that Sanji even hasn't. To where he will fight women now. I mean, his battle against Monet, for example, and Punk Hazard, like that was a great battle. um, but he just has so much potential, and honestly, I really believe that Wano is going to be his arc. Just like Whole Cake was Sanji's, Wano is going to do wonders for his character. Because Wano was first introduced in an interaction he had in Thriller Bark with the zombie swordsman from Wano, whose name I cannot think of at the moment. Um, I think it was Ryu or something like that, something simple like that. But he had the interaction with him. He even got the sword from him. But yeah, that was the first mention of Wano, I believe, and it's like so Wano is directly in our minds as viewers tied to Zoro. So I think they're gonna do. I think Oda's gonna do amazing stuff with him in this oncoming arc. Um, but even before that, he's still just such a great character. Like he has some of the best moments in the series. And speaking of Thriller Bark, when he took Luffy's pain at the end of Thriller Bark, holy shit, that is one of the best moments in this show, without question. That was so heavy and so intense, and I loved it. Um, it just shows how loyal he is, and he's also funny. He's goofy. He his interactions with the rest of the crew are sometimes really fun and silly and ridiculous, but that's part of what makes him so fun to watch. He's also extremely badass and can be surprisingly smart at times, while at other times being super fucking dumb. And his the entire running gag with him being terrible with directions, by the way, is hilarious. I still love that running gag. But seriously, that's why he's my number two. But of course, there is one above him, and you guys all know who it is. It's the one character in this series I simp over more than anyone else, Nico Robin. Robin is just perfection to me as a character. Her backstory is easily, in my opinion, the most tragic, and it just gets to me even today after having seen and heard it so many times. Her moments and stuff in the Water 7 and Enies Lobbies arcs were just breathtakingly intense and powerful. The entire I Want to Live moment, it's like, that is still my favorite moment in this entire series. Like, without question. And it probably always will be. Um, the moment that's shown that this picture displays when she's crying over Ryunosuke's death, the painted dragon, in Zoe, the one samurai created with his devil fruit powers when he goes after bringing them up the I believe up the elephant Sunisha, I think it is. But either way, when she cries when he's like dying, when he's fading, like just her love for that dragon, that cute little painted dragon, is awesome, and I love it. But her devil fruit power, one of my favorites. I just love the concept of it. Her design, post and pre time skip, even though I prefer pre time skip, and I'm still really upset about the skin tone change post time skip, even though I still don't like that they did that. Her design is still great. She has some of the best outfits of any character in throughout the series, and I love her personality. Plus, there's just these little details strewn out throughout the series that once you notice just makes her even better. Like prior to Eni's Lobby, prior to her saying she wants to live in Eni's Lobby, do you realize that she calls every member of the crew by their title, by their position rather than their names? Like she refers to Chopper as Doctor, she refers to Luffy as Captain. Zoro as swordsman, all of that kind of stuff. Sanji as cook, so on and so forth. But after Amy's lobby, she starts referring to them by name because at that point she's truly indebted to them. At that point, she truly feels like she's part of the crew and not just unworthy of being in their presence because of how fucked up her life has been. The fact that she now calls them by name because she truly feels like she's a straw hat as well, that's beautiful. And there's all kinds of stuff like that sprinkled throughout. And all kinds of even just really funny gags and stuff. Like in Thriller Bark, where Franky and the other crew members are like building the human robot kind of thing. They're just like standing on top of each other and shit. And they tell Robin to join in. And she's like, no, that would hurt my human pride. It's like, that is funny as fuck. That is just really fucking funny. Not to mention, she has presence all the way back from when she was first introduced as Miss All Sunday during the Alabasta saga. She's had just this presence to her that just stands out amongst everyone else. She feels like just bigger and grander. And it's not just because she's older than pretty much everyone else in the crew except Brook and Jimbei. And Brook doesn't really count because he's really, really much older because he's dead. He's a skeleton, a magical talking skeleton. But even so, and Jimbei just joined, so it's still kind of just new to count him in, and he hasn't really had as many interactions with Robin, honestly. But even either way, she's just had so many great moments. Her interactions with the crew are awesome. I love her interactions with Chopper, especially. They just feel like they're just best friends. Those two are just best buddies, and I love to see them interact with each other. I had recently watched through the Long Ring Long Land arcs again, thanks to two reactors I watch, AJ Rich and Rough Senpai. I've talked about them, and Robin is great in that arc. Her interactions with Chopper are fantastic, and they just come across as just really close, and I love it. But even her interactions with everyone else are great. The way her and Nami kind of act like sisters towards each other, the way she kind of just laughs along and enjoys the ride with Luffy and stuff, and so on and so forth. Of course, her enjoying, well, kind of enjoying, but just kind of allowing Sanji to simp over her. She's much more appreciative of it than Nami is most of the time. Well, Nami, okay, to be fair, Nami appreciates it. But Nami's more willing to attack him and hit him too for going overboard, while Robin just kind of is chill about it. Part of her winning personality. But yeah, so those are my 10 favorite. 10 favorite. I'm used to making these like top tens. Those are my rankings for the Straw Hat Crew. Once again, as of the end of Whole Cake Island. Like I said before, this list will most likely change as time goes on. And once I either catch up with the series and fully caught up and reacting live, or once Wano ends, at that point, at one of those points, I will remake this list just to see how things have changed. Um, but in the meantime, tell me in the comments below, where do you rank the Straw Hats from least to most favorite? Or just who are your favorite members and who are your least? And are there any characters who you would love to see join the crew in the future? For me, obviously, that would be Carrot, because she already feels like a member of the crew, let's be honest. Like, the way they interact with her, even, she just feels like she's already part of the crew. Like, more so than even Vivi felt back then, honestly. Um, but yeah, tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and thank you so much for tuning in. For now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.